Hello everyone, and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the small, dimly lit living room was thick with tension, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes each breath feel heavier than the last. Luna stood by the window, her silhouette against the fading light of a late autumn evening, clutching the envelope with trembling fingers. The DNA results were inside, a folded piece of paper containing the truth she had both feared and desired for months. Her dark hair fell in tangled strands over her shoulders, and her eyes, which had once been bright with hope, burned with a quiet, dangerous intensity. Across the room, Bill sat on the edge of the couch, his hands tightly clasped and his knuckles white. Bridget, ever the calm mediator, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Luna with sympathy and concern. Katie, agitated and anxious, paced near the door, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the hardwood floor. Will, the group's youngest member, sat cross-legged on the rug, his wide eyes darting between them all, sensing the impending storm. The five of them were united by a shared history, a tangled web of love, betrayal, and secrets that had festered for years. They had grown up in the same small town, their lives inextricably linked since childhood. Luna and Bill were high school sweethearts, with a bright flame that everyone expected to last forever. Luna's best friend, Bridget, had always been the voice of reason, keeping the group grounded. Katie, who was bold and impulsive, had been the source of chaos, constantly pushing the boundaries. Will, the quiet observer, admired them all, particularly Luna, whose fiery spirit had always captivated him. But time had broken their bonds, and as adults, they were strangers to one another, brought together by a single, devastating revelation. The envelope in Luna's hand represented the culmination of months of suspicion. Bill had been distant for years, his once warm gaze now icy and evasive. Luna had heard whispers, rumors about an affair, a child, and a life he had created behind her back. She had demanded answers, but Bill's evasive responses only fueled her frustration. Finally, as a last resort, she sought a DNA test to confirm the truth about the child she suspected was his. The results had arrived that morning, and Luna had summoned them all to her home, the one she and Bill had once envisioned filling with their own children. "Luna, just open it," Bridget said softly, breaking through the silence. "Whatever it says, we'll deal with it together." Luna's lips tightened into a thin line. "Together," she repeated, her tone low and bitter. "Do you think we've ever been together in this? You all know. You have all seen it. And none of you said anything." "That's not fair," Katie exclaimed, stopping her pacing. "We weren't sure. We did not want to hurt you without proof." "Proof?" Luna's voice rose sharp and jagged. "It's my life, Katie. My life. And you all allowed me to live a lie." Bill shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Luna, I told you it's not what you think. Stop lying." Luna's shout echoed throughout the room, causing Will to flinch and curl his hands into fists. She ripped open the envelope, her fingers shaking as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the words, and time appeared to stand still for a brief moment. The entire room held its breath as Luna's face drained of color, her expression crumpling into something raw and broken. "It's true," she said softly, barely audible. "You've got a daughter. With her." Bill's head snapped up, his eyes wide with fear. "Luna, Don't," she interrupted him, her voice trembling with rage. "Don't you dare say my name." Bridget took a step forward, raising her hands in a calming gesture. "Luna, let's talk about it. We can figure it out." "Figure it out?" Luna laughed with a hollow, bitter tone. "There is nothing to figure out, Bridget. He betrayed me. He betrayed us all." Katie approached Luna, her voice softening. "Luna, I know you're hurt, but this isn't the way." Before Katie could finish, Luna reached into her jacket pocket and retrieved a small handgun. The sight of it froze everyone in place. Will's breath caught in his throat and his eyes widened in shock. Bridget's hands fell to her sides, her face pale. Bill stood slowly, his hands raised and his voice shaking. "Luna, put that down. Please. You don't get to tell me what to do," Luna said, her voice steady and cold. "Not anymore." The first shot went off before anyone could react. Katie was hit as she lunged forward in a desperate attempt to grab the gun. She crumpled to the ground, a cry of agony escaping her lips as blood flowed across her shoulder. Will screamed and scrambled to his feet, his hands shaking as he dashed to Katie's aid. Katie! Oh my God, Katie! Bridget lunged at Luna, her voice frantic. Luna, stop. This is not you. But Luna's eyes were wild, and her grip on the gun remained firm. You don't know me, she said angrily. None of you ever did. The second shot was faster than the first. It struck Bill in the chest, and he staggered back, clutching at his wound as he fell to the ground. Blood dripped through his fingers and pooled beneath him as he gasped for air. Bridget screamed, dropping to her knees beside him and pressing her hands against the wound in an unsuccessful attempt to stop the bleeding. Luna, why? Bridget sobbed, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? Luna's eyes were distant, her face a mask of anguish and fury. Because he took everything from me, she explained, barely above a whisper. My love, future, and trust. And you all let it happen. Will, still kneeling beside Katie, looked up at Luna, tears streaking his face. Luna, please, he begged. This is not the answer. You're not this person. Luna's gaze softened as she looked at Will. He had always seen her, even when she felt invisible. But the moment passed, and her face hardened again. I'm sorry, Will, she admitted, her voice breaking. But I can't go back. Before anyone could stop her, Luna shot herself. The final shot echoed throughout the room, and she collapsed, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Bridget's scream was raw and animalistic, as she crawled toward Luna, shaking her lifeless body. No, 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 she sobbed, her fingers trembling as they touched Luna's face. Luna, please, no. Will sat frozen, his hands still pressed against Katie's wound, his mind unable to process the horror unfolding around him. Katie's breathing was shallow, and her face was pale, but she was still alive. Bill, on the other hand, was gone, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling and his chest remaining still. Luna lay motionless, the gun still clutched in her hand, her face serene in a way it had not been in life. The room was a devastation scene, the air heavy with the metallic scent of blood and the weight of irreversible decisions. Bridget rocked back and forth, her hands stained with Bill's blood, and her sobs broke the silence. Will's hands shook as he attempted to maintain pressure on Katie's wound, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Stay with me, Katie. Please stay with me." Minutes later, the police arrived, their sirens breaking the silence of the evening. Paramedics rushed in, their voices sharp and urgent as they assessed the situation. Katie was lifted onto a stretcher. Her condition was critical but stable. Bill and Luna's bodies were covered in sheets and left where they had fallen. Bridget sat in the corner, knees drawn to her chest and eyes vacant as she stared at the blood on her palms. Will stood outside, the cold air biting at his skin, his mind replaying the moment Luna's eyes met his, and he failed to reach her. In the days that followed, the town was gripped by grief and speculation. The story of Luna's vengeance spread like wildfire, with each retelling more sensational than the last. The DNA results, which confirmed Bill's infidelity, were discussed by both neighbors and strangers. Bridget, once a pillar of the group, withdrew into herself, haunted by guilt over not doing more to stop Luna. Katie survived, but the bullet caused permanent damage, serving as a constant reminder of that night. Will, unable to stay in a town full of ghosts, left without saying anything, carrying the weight of his failure to save Luna. The house where it all happened was empty, its windows dark, and its walls stained with the memory of that night. Luna's rage had burned brightly and briefly, consuming everything in its path. Bill's betrayal had set everything in motion, but it was Luna's decision to pull the trigger that brought it to an end. Bridget, Katie, and Will were left to pick up the pieces, dealing with their own guilt, loss, and questions about what might have been. Years later, Bridget would go to Luna's grave, a small, unassuming stone in the town cemetery. She would sit there for hours, talking to the friend she had lost, apologizing for the secrets she had kept and the warning signs she had ignored. Katie, now with a limp and quiet strength, would rebuild her life, but she would never talk about that night. Will carried Luna's memory with him everywhere he went, a reminder of the fragility of love and the cost of vengeance. Their story was one of love turned to pain, trust shattered by betrayal, and a moment that changed everything. It was a sad, quiet tragedy that left no winners, only survivors, each burdened by the weight of their losses. In the end, the truth that Luna had sought so desperately came at a cost that none of them could have predicted. The tension in the room had been building for days, ever since it was announced that the long-awaited DNA results would be released. Everyone had their own reasons for being nervous, their own fears and hopes entwined in the outcome, but no one could have predicted how violently the situation would unfold. Luna, known for her fiery temper and deep-seated grudges, had been simmering with rage and determination, and when the results arrived, the simmer erupted into chaos. Bridget had been sitting quietly on the edge of the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, and her gaze darting nervously between Luna and the others. She had been dreading this moment, not because she didn't want to know the truth, but because she knew it would alter everything. When the announcement arrived, relief washed over her face. The DNA results were both what she had feared and, strangely, what she had hoped for. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxed, and a small, private smile crossed her lips. Finally, clarity. The tangled web of secrets and lies that had dominated their lives appeared to unravel for a brief moment. She had braced herself for confrontation, arguments, and possibly even violence, but she had not anticipated the speed and ferocity with which Luna would exact her revenge. Luna's eyes were wild and unyielding. Her fingers gripped the gun with lethal precision, revealing the depth of her intention. Nobody expected her to act so quickly, to move the information from paper to action in mere moments. The room appeared to freeze in anticipation as Luna stepped forward, each movement deliberate, each breath measured, but the energy around her was almost unbearable. The air itself appeared thick with the impending storm, a static charge that foreshadowed disaster. Bridget, who was slightly relieved by the DNA results, could only watch in stunned silence, knowing that her relief was fleeting. Bill had been standing near the doorway, his thoughts racing as he attempted to assess the situation. He'd never seen Luna like this before. Her rage was raw, uncontrollable, and terrifyingly focused. His instincts screamed for him to move, intervene, and do something to stop what was clearly coming, but fear kept him in place. He looked over at Katie, who was also frozen, her eyes wide with fear. The bond they shared, the years of trust and friendship, felt suddenly frail, as if it could be broken with the slightest misstep. Katie's hands trembled, and her lips parted in a silent gasp, as if the impending violence was both inevitable and unstoppable. Will, standing slightly behind them, was equally as surprised. He was aware of Luna's intensity and volatile nature, but seeing it manifest in this way, with a weapon in hand and fury in her eyes, was a level of horror he had not expected. He wished to speak, reason, and intervene, but words failed him. All he could do was watch, powerless, as the moments passed, each with the potential for irreversible consequences. The tension was nearly unbearable. Then something happened. The sound of the gunshot cut through the air, sharp and final. Time appeared to distort around the violence. Bill and Katie were immediately struck, collapsing to the ground, the shock of the moment etched on their faces. The world seemed to slow down for them, with every sensation amplified, pain, confusion, and the sudden realization of vulnerability. Luna's eyes remained fixed, her expression grimly determined. She had made her decision, and nothing else mattered. The room was a chaotic blur of movement, fear, and the lingering sound of gunfire. Bridget struggled to process what she was seeing. Relief over the DNA results vanished in an instant, replaced by panic and disbelief. The person she had known as dangerous, intense, and volatile had turned lethal, and the consequences of Luna's actions were immediate. Her mind raced, attempting to reconcile the friend she had trusted, the woman she had seen struggling with anger and grief, with the figure now standing over Bill and Katie, weapon still in hand, and an almost feral calm in her demeanor. She wanted to move, help, and intervene, but fear and Luna's unpredictable actions kept her rooted in place. Bill groaned as he tried to push himself up from the floor, his body aching from the impact. Katie lay beside him, her eyes wide and unfocused, unable to comprehend the unexpected assault. Luna, on the other hand, appeared to be focused somewhere else, her mind already moving beyond the immediate chaos she had caused. Will, meanwhile, was frozen in shock, his mind a whirlpool of confusion, horror, and disbelief. How could someone they knew, who they had shared so much with, cross this line so completely? The answer was both terrifying and obvious. Luna's desire for vengeance, her sense of justice, twisted and personal, had trumped everything else. Bridget, gathering her remaining courage, took a cautious step forward, her voice barely audible. "Please, Luna, this is not the way," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Luna's plea seemed to hang in the air, almost swallowed up by the tension, but her focus remained unwavering. Her eyes glinted with a mix of rage and satisfaction, as the DNA results confirmed something she had long believed, fueling the vindictive streak that now consumed her completely. There was no hesitation or wavering in her movement, only the cold, calculated precision of someone who had decided the world must pay the price for a perceived injustice. Will finally found his voice, a hoarse shout barely audible above the din. "Luna! Stop! Think about what you are doing." His words, intended to reach her, seemed to highlight the impossible nature of the situation. He was desperate, terrified for his friends, and acutely aware that his own safety was now at risk. The room appeared to contract around them, the walls pressing inward under the weight of fear and impending danger. Every heartbeat was a drum of anticipation, and every breath was a countdown to the next act of violence. Luna responded with a cold, measured silence. She did not speak or falter. The DNA results triggered something inside her, a sense of vindication that justified her actions in her own mind. She saw the world in stark black and white, with justice and vengeance indistinguishable in their severity. To her, the shots fired were not random acts of violence, but rather a statement, a final reckoning. Bill and Katie were the immediate victims of a deeply personal vendetta that none of the others fully understood. Bridget's heart raced as she attempted to think of a way to defuse the situation. Her mind raced through memories of Luna, looking for any traces of the friend she had once known, any indication that logic might reach her. She recalled the numerous arguments, shared laughter, and moments of vulnerability and trust. Was any of this still intact? Could it be enough to reach Luna now? Or had the DNA results tipped the scales beyond hope? Fear and hope mingled in a confusing swirl. Bill, bloodied and disoriented, struggled to stand again. His mind was a jumble of pain and disbelief, trying to reconcile the violence with the woman he had known. He had been in danger before, but never like this, from someone whose betrayal cut so deep. His gaze shifted to Will and Bridget, desperate for a lifeline, a strategy, anything that would restore some semblance of safety. Katie's shallow breaths and trembling form only added to the urgency. Will moved closer to Luna, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "You don't need to do this, Luna. You can walk away," he insisted, his voice firmer now despite the fear coursing through him. He was appealing to reason, to some aspect of the woman he had known beyond the fury. Luna's gaze flickered to him, revealing the tiniest crack in her otherwise impenetrable resolve. For a brief moment, there was a chance, just a sliver of a chance, that her rage could be contained, that the violence could be stopped before more harm was done. However, Luna's nature was not easily swayed. The confirmation of the DNA results validated her long-held suspicions, grudges, and desire for vengeance. In her opinion, justice required action, and hesitation was not an option. Her movements were precise, deliberate, and terrifying in their predictability. Every flick of her wrist, every tightening of her grip on the gun conveyed a resolve that no argument could break. Bridget, sensing a fleeting opportunity, tried again, her voice trembling but more insistent. "Luna, this is not you. You are better than this. You can take a step back." Her words hung in the charged air, desperate and almost pleading. Will added his own, reinforcing the plea, hoping to reach whatever part of Luna was still listening. The room took a collective breath. The chaos temporarily halted as all eyes turned to the central figure whose actions had shattered their sense of security.